You know that feeling when you buy a fancy multi-tool, but you really only ever use the bottle opener?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Paying for bells and whistles you just don't need.
It happens a lot with pro audio software too, doesn't it? So much power. But maybe you just need like one specific conversion task done right.
Exactly. And you end up paying for the whole massive suite, which can hit the wallet and honestly, just complicate things sometimes.
Well, that's kind of the problem we're looking at today. We're doing a deep dive into EY Converter Modula R.
Right. The name itself, Modular R, it sort of gives the game away, doesn't it? A building block idea.
It does, and we want to figure out how this modular thing actually works. Can it save you money? Can it make things, simpler?
And importantly, how does it let you build a custom toolkit just for your audio conversion needs?
So, to get the real story, we're going straight to the source. All our info today comes directly from the OI Converter Module R website.
Keeps things factual.
Yeah.
And an interesting side note, they actually offer their interface in Amvaya, Russian, as well as English.
Oh, interesting. Shows a wider reach, perhaps?
Yeah, suggests a fairly international user base.
Okay, so our mission then. Let's unpack Modula R. Understand the modules, the benefits, the potential pitfalls, how you actually navigate this whole system.
Let's do it. So the core idea is, well, it's actually one single application you download.
Okay, not lots of little programs then.
No, no. The different functions are unlocked using license keys. They call these keys modules.
Ah, so a module isn't software, it's a code, a text string.
Exactly. You get a key, you enter it into the main application, and boom, that feature lights up, like flipping a switch.
So it's like having a basic workshop, main app, and then you buy individual tools, license keys for specific jobs.
Perfect analogy. And these tools cover things like changing sample rates, the detail level of the audio.
Or bit depth, which is like the dynamic range.
Right, or down mixing surround sound to stereo. You only activate the keys, the modules, for the specific functions you actually perform.
Okay, so you're building your own custom converter.
Pretty much. And here's a crucial bit. If you collect all the available modules on one computer, you essentially end up with the exact same functionality as their big all-inclusive version, which is called Produce RD.
Ah, okay, so the full power is potentially there, just accessed differently.
Precisely. You just have much finer control over what you pay for and what you enable.
Which leads to the obvious question. Why choose this way? Why Modula R?
Well, the biggest draw for many, initially at least, is probably the budget.
Right. If you only need a couple of things, you only pay for a couple of things.
Exactly. If your work is focused, say, just converting standard WAVs to FLACs up to 192 kilohertz, you buy just those modules. It can be significantly cheaper than the full Produce RD package.
Makes sense. Any other advantages? Maybe performance or usability?
Potentially. You could argue that having only the needed functions active might make the application feel a bit leaner, maybe use fewer resources, though that might be marginal.
Maybe.
But a cleaner interface, perhaps. Showing only the tools you've paid for, that could definitely streamline your workflow.
Uh,
Less clutter.
yeah, I can see that. Like our multi-tool, again, just the bottle opener, nice and simple.
Right.
But what if your needs change? Or what if you start with the basics and then, I don't know, you get into DSD audio or something?
That's the beauty of it. It's designed to be scalable. You just buy more modules later on.
So you can add capabilities piece by piece.
Yep. Purchase another module license, activate it, and your software gains that new function. No need to buy a whole new program.
Okay, let's talk logistics then.
Yeah.
Getting these modules, you buy one, what happens next?
You'll get an email, typically. It'll have the download link for the main Modular R application itself if you don't have it already.
Right.
And crucially, that license key text string for the module you just bought. Add-on modules usually don't need separate downloads. Their code is already in the main app just waiting to be unlocked.
And activating it.
Yeah.
Easy.
It seems pretty straightforward. Install the main app, launch it, and somewhere in the menus there'll be an option to enter license keys.
You just copy and paste the text from the email.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Paste it in, click activate, and assuming it's a valid key for your version, the features just appear.
Okay. Now, the website mentions core modules. What are those? Are they special?
Yeah, they're fundamental. Think of them as the engine block. You generally need at least one core module installed and activated for the software to do much of anything.
So they're prerequisites.
Often, yes. Add-on modules, the more specialized ones, might depend on a core module being active first. The site names 3 core ones: Base, Secure CD Ripper, and ISO Extract.
And these core modules, they can do stuff on their own too, right? They're not just unlock codes for other things.
Correct. They have standalone functionality. Take the base module, for example.
What's that do by itself?
A fair bit, actually. It handles basic conversions between common formats like WAV, FLAC, AIFF.
The standard lossless ones.
Right. And if you have the right external codecs installed on your system, it can also work with formats like M4A, MP3, OGG, WMA, even surround formats like DTS and AC3 and WavePack.
Wow, okay, so Base is pretty capable on its own.
It is. It does single-file batch conversion, supports sample rates up to 192 kilohertz, handles common bit depths like 16, 24, and 32-bit float, and includes dithering options.
Dithering. That's for when you reduce bit depth, right?
Right.
To minimize noise.
Exactly. And importantly, Base is also the foundation needed for certain add-ons like true gateless playback or level normalizing.
Okay, so Base sounds like a really common starting point. What about the secure CD ripper?
That one's focused, as the name suggests, on ripping audio CDs safely. It aims for accurate rips.
To what formats?
By itself, it rips to standard formats like WAV and FLAC, but only at standard CD quality 44.1 kilohertz 16-bit.
Makes sense for a direct rip.
Yep, and it does single-track batch ripping and can automatically fetch metadata like artist and track names from online databases. Saves a lot of typing.
Very useful. But if you wanted to rip to, say, MP3 or a high-resolution FLAC.
Then you'd need more modules. You'd need the base module active and potentially specific add-on modules for those other formats or resolutions. The Ripper core just handles the secure extraction part.
Got it. And the third core module, ISO extract. Sounds specific.
It is. It's all about super audio CDs, SACDs. Specifically, extracting audio data from SACD ISO files, which are disk images.
Okay, so not from the physical disk.
No, from the ISO file image. This module abstracts the raw DSD stream data.
DSD, direct string digital. The high-res format used on SACDs.
That's one. The core ISO extract model performs a bit-perfect extraction, but only to DSF format and only at the base DSD64 resolution. It also grabs the metadata.
So again, if you want to convert that DSD to PCM or extract at higher DSD rates like DSD128 or DSD256.
You guessed it. You'll need the base module for the conversion framework and specific DSD input and output add-on modules for the different formats and resolutions.
The website gives examples of this, right? Combining modules.
Yes. Very helpful ones, like converting an SED ISO to PCM needs base plus ISO extract plus an input D64128 module.
So ISO extract gets the data, input D64128 understands that specific DSD rate, and base handles the conversion to PCM.
Exactly. Or for converting that ISO to high-res DSD, say up to DSD 512, you'd need a chain like ISO extract plus input D64128 plus base plus maybe output D64128 plus output D256512.
Wow. Okay. It really is like snapping together different processing blocks for a specific task.
It really clarifies how you build your custom workflow by combining these pieces.
Now, software versions, always a potential headache. How does that work with these modules?
Good question. The license keys, the modules, are tied to a specific major version number, like version 11.x, version 12.x, and so on.
So my version 11 module keys won't work if I install version 12 of the main application?
Not automatically, no. If you buy a new module that requires, say, version 12, but you only have version 11 installed, that new module just won't activate. It won't function.
And buying the new module key doesn't automatically give me the version 12 software update.
Correct. The website is clear on this. Entering a newer key doesn't magically update the core application. You'd need to purchase the major version upgrades separately.
Right. That's crucial to understand. Avoid frustration later. What about really old versions, like 10.x or earlier?
Yeah, there's a special note about that. If you have a very old setup like version 10.x and you buy a new module today, you'll typically get a key for the latest software version.
Which wouldn't work on their old 10.x install.
Right. But if the module you bought was also available back in version 10.x, the website says you can contact their support.
And they'll help.
Apparently, yes. They can swap the new key you received for an older key that is compatible with your legacy 10.x version. It's a nice touch for longtime users.
That is good customer support. Okay, licensing model. Is it subscription? Rent to own? Buy forever?
It's perpetual. You buy the module license once, and you own the right to use it for that major version indefinitely. No monthly or yearly fees.
That's becoming rarer these days. Good to hear.
It is, though they do mention that licenses for older major versions might not always be available for purchase, maybe due to technical reasons. So getting the latest is generally the way to go.
And minor updates, like bug fixes within, say, version 12, going from 12.1 to 12.2.
Those are included. Minor updates within the major version you purchased are free, keeps things stable and fixes issues.
But jumping from version 12 to version 13 would require payment.
Yes, for a major version upgrade, you typically need to pay. They mention an extra warranty option for Modula R that seems to cover this major version upgrade cost.
Okay, standard practice mostly. Now, you mentioned Mac and Windows earlier. Is licensing different across operating systems?
It used to be. For older versions, like 11.x and before, you needed separate keys, one for Mac, one for Windows. Bit of a pain.
Yeah, definitely.
But newer versions use universal keys. One key works for both Mac and Windows.
Much better. How does that work? Activation.
Yes, these universal keys require online activation. When you activate it on one machine, it links to that computer.
So just to recap the activation, buy module, get email with key, paste key into the Modula R software, and for newer versions, it connects online to verify and activate.
That's the gist of it. And this activation system also manages transferring licenses.
How so?
You can deactivate the license on one computer, which frees it up, and then activate it on another computer. Useful if you get a new machine.
As long as you're only using it on one machine at a time per the license.
Exactly.
Okay, let's circle back to Modula R versus Produce RD. We know Modula R can be cheaper initially, and Produce RD has everything. What else is critical in that decision?
Well, we know the features eventually match up if you buy all the modules, so capability-wise, full Modula R equals Produce RD.
It really comes down to cost structure and maybe future-proofing.
Exactly. If you are certain you only need a few specific things, Modula R saves money up front. But, and this is a warning on their site, if you end up buying lots of modules one by one over time, the total cost might actually end up being more than if you just bought Produce RD from the start.
The a la carte menu versus the buffet price. Need to calculate carefully.
You do. Think about your likely needs over the next year or two, and here's probably the biggest deciding factor.
Go on.
You cannot upgrade Modula R to Produce RD directly.
Really? No upgrade path?
Nope. They are considered separate products. If you start with Modula R and later decide you want everything, you have to buy Produce RD outright as a new purchase.
Wow. Okay, that's a major consideration.
Yeah.
You need to choose your path carefully from the beginning.
Absolutely. That piece of information is vital.
Let's quickly revisit those core modules again. Base, CD Ripper, ISO Extract. We talked about what they do alone, but how do they technically enable the add-ons?
Think of them as providing the underlying engine. The base module, for instance, probably has all the fundamental code for reading, writing standard audio file structures, managing memory, the basic conversion math.
The plumbing, basically.
Yeah, the core plumbing. Then an add-on, like the one for, say, 384 kilohertz sample rate support. That module contains the specific algorithms and know-how for handling that high rate, but it plugs into the base module's framework to actually read the source file, process the data stream, and write the output file.
So base provides the highway, and the add-on provides the specific high-speed lane for 384 kilohertz traffic.
That's a decent analogy, yes. The core module lays the foundation. The add-ons build specialized structures on top of it.
Which explains those complex chains for SACD conversion we talked about. ISO Extract gets the raw stuff. The input module understands the specific DSD rate. Base provides the conversion engine to PCM, and an output module shapes the final file.
Precisely. Each module contributes its specialized part to the overall processing pathway you've constructed by activating those specific licenses.
Very clever, really. Now, the website has an FAQ section, too. Anything crucial in there we haven't covered?
It reinforces a few key things. Definitely hammers home again that a module is a license key, just text, not a file to install.
Good to repeat, avoids confusion.
Yes. And it touches again on that Modula R versus Produce RD decision, reminding you about the potential long-term costs of adding modules individually.
What about licensing details? Like using one license on multiple computers?
The FAQ is clear. One license, one computer at a time. Activation ties it to a machine.
But you can move it.
Yes, by deactivating on the old machine first, then activating on the new one. Standard license management. It also mentions contacting support. If you somehow run out of activation attempts, they can reset it if your license is valid.
Okay, helpful. Did it clarify module dependencies more?
It did. Gave specific examples, like needing both the DSD input module and the base module to convert DSD to PCM. Can't just use the input module alone for that.
Makes sense. Base does the PCM conversion part.
Right. And it clarified that, say, a DSD-2256512 input module doesn't automatically handle lower rates like DSD-64128. You need the specific input module for the rate you're working with.
So you might need multiple DSD input modules if you work with various resolutions.
Potentially, yes. Same logic applies to output modules for DSD, different modules for different target resolutions or formats.
Any of the quirks.
It mentioned that parallel processing, converting multiple files at once using multiple CPU cores.
Yeah, speeding up batch jobs.
That's a specific, separate add-on module in Modular R. It's not necessarily included by default like it might be in some other software, even free ones sometimes.
Ah, okay. Another specific feature to license if you need that speed boost.
Exactly. And finally, it just reiterated the version compatibility stuff keys tied to major versions, pre-12.x especially, and that support option for getting older keys if needed when buying new modules for a legacy setup.
So the FAQ really pulls together the practical details, understanding the core add-on relationship, the dependencies, the versions, the licensing. It seems absolutely key to using Modular R effectively.
Definitely. Knowing this stuff lets you make smart choices, build the right toolkit, and manage your investment properly.
Okay, well, bringing this deep dive towards its conclusion, it seems AUI Converter Modular R offers a genuinely interesting alternative in the audio conversion world.
It really does. That modular structure gives you flexibility and potentially, cost savings if your needs are specific.
But you absolutely need to understand how those modules, the core ones and the add-ons, work together. Version compatibility is crucial, and so is the licensing.
And making that upfront choice between Modular R, starting small and potentially growing, versus Produce RD, getting everything at once, is a big decision point, especially since there's no direct upgrade path from one to the other.
Right. But if you get your head around these concepts, you can really tailor your software precisely, avoid paying for features you don't need, and maybe end up with a more streamlined workflow.
Which is often the goal, isn't it? Efficiency and getting the job done without unnecessary complexity.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. In a world where software often feels like it's getting bigger and more bloated, what are the real pros and cons of this kind of modular approach? Not just for audio, but for software in general. Could breaking things down into purchasable blocks be a better model for users in other areas too? Or does it just create its own kind of complexity?
That's a great question. Does modularity ultimately empower the user more or just shift the complexity elsewhere? Definitely something to chew on.